any circumstances goes back. Nigel was being political there, saying it's a difficult area.
And you would be happy for the UK government to do a deal with the Taliban that oppresses women, doesn't allow them access to education.
Yeah, but that's their system. Why should we have to accommodate somebody else's thought process?
Because they're fleeing something so dreadful.
Right. So you taking? Anybody know?
Send women and kids back to Taliban rule. Nigel Farage's Rwanda plan just got turbocharged 50 million. Boats stopped. Borders locked. Watch now before the left shuts it down.
We don't want them. OK, let's be honest. I actually don't want them.
So
you may want them. Everybody goes back, I'm afraid.
What? So you would send women and girls back to Afghanistan? This is
where I differ from Farage. I would say anybody who comes here under any circumstances goes back. Nigel was being political there, saying it's a difficult area.
And you would be happy for the UK government to do a deal with the Taliban that oppresses women, doesn't allow them access to education.
Yeah, but that's their system. Why should we have to accommodate somebody else's thought process?
Because they're fleeing something so dreadful.
Right. So you taking? Anybody know? If you could look it up, how many people live in Afghanistan? They're all being oppressed. We take the whole damn country. I don't want 50, 80, 150 million over here.
About women and girls.
Right. What? We're talking about what? 10, 15 million? How many are we talking about?
I don't know.
Oh, right. Well, you should know, Joe. You're in favour of bringing them over here. I'm just saying we're not going to have them. I'm asking you
a question that you would send them back. I would. And I think there is a different argument, which is you could process people in a third place, a safe place, but you send people back to somewhere like that?
I would send them back everywhere.
What do you think?
Otherwise, everywhere in the world could simply come here.
How many women and girls have managed to come to the UK in the boats from Afghanistan?
Very few, I think.
I couldn't find any accurate figures, but I think it's pretty much known. It's mainly from Afghanistan, and I think they're the second largest group after Eritrea.
But the point is once you say something like we're going to send everybody back, that you're going to send back unaccompanied children?
I'm not sending anyone back. I'm sitting here getting
but I mean, there has to be a level of reasonableness.
If we knew where those kids came from, they have to.
But I think the point about Rwanda was it was badly thought through. There was no evidence to say that it was going to act a deterrent. That was the advice given to Suella Braverman and Priti Patel, the two Home Secretaries that went through the process, and nobody has come up with anything else. And you're absolutely right. There does need to be a deterrent for sure. And tinkering around the edges.
Can I just say though, Joe, the great thing about you and the great thing about the liberal view of life is that in fact everybody says there's got to be a deterrent, and then somebody says, well, what about Rwanda, or what about the Congo, or what about something like, oh no, we can't do that. No, but they're not very nice to people. But whether they're very nice to people is not our problem. Our problem is I don't want 50,000, 100,000. I just don't want any more. In fact, I would have a pause for 10 years and say, after 10 years, we'll look at it again. But up until then, we are simply not taking anybody.
So tell me this, and why did the previous governments not use the ability...
They're not a good person to name. They were absolutely...
They were dreadful.
They were absolutely dreadful.
No one's arguing that the Conservative government covered themselves in glory with this one.
For years and years and years until we left the EU, we had the right to send people back to the country that they first set foot in, not the country of origin, under the Dublin Agreement. We pulled out of the EU, so that has been taken away from us. But why was that not used?
I totally agree. The great disaster of Brexit has been that we can't do what we could prior to Brexit. And I think that is why you get all these polls. There was one very recently showing that people say, let's not have Brexit anymore because we'd be able to send people back. And actually, if you offered that as a poll, as an general election, said, if we go back into it, it will stop people coming across the channel.
We'd also have access to fingerprints.
I think things would change. I think it's a dramatic... It was a dramatic hole in the Brexit argument.
But they need to be really honest about that, because all the time we're coming up with these eye-catching headlines.
So why don't you suggest that? Why don't you become the leader of that thing? We can solve the problem about people coming here, right? We can solve the problem coming over here if we rejoin Europe.
Absolutely.
And then, for instance, if you Starmer hold a general election on the basis of it, I think you'd probably skate home.
Well, talking of Europe, I mean, Germany, still part of the ECHR, is managing to send migrants, male and female, back to Afghanistan. They don't have a problem with that.
In Germany, they're sending back convicted criminals. Denmark are doing it, and yes, there are people
who cross the channel are illegal. They're breaking British law, so therefore they are criminals.
Well, I think that's heartless.
Oh, it's factually accurate. It's factually accurate.
The old liberal
well,
view.
I'm sorry, but I think it's absolutely heartless.
But they are criminals. They have broken the law by crossing the channel illegally. Therefore, they are illegal. Therefore, if we were Germany, we could send them to Afghanistan.
Well, I tell you what, we've talked a lot in the last few weeks about the rising cost of benefits and the fact of the number of people out of work. You could argue that some people who actually are using huge initiative and resilience to get here, who want to make a better life, maybe we need people like that.
That's a great idea, I always thought, didn't you, Kelvin? Make it more attractive to come here.
Yeah, no, we want that. And I think Jo, without giving her address, lives in Whitstable, where I don't think many of these issues face you in the same way as they do in either Birmingham or London. I just make that point.
It's an absolutely fair point. It's an absolutely fair point. And I think, much of the debate has taken place in areas where, we are not necessarily seeing the impact on our doorstep. But I think that it is very dangerous. We get into this everybody with brown skin, everybody wearing a sari.
I am sick of hearing that the United Kingdom is powerless to defend her own borders. We are not powerless. We are simply governed by people who do not want to defend them. The clip you just watched proves the point. Kelvin McKenzie and Joe Phillips argue about Rwanda, 50 million, and whether we should send Afghan women back to the Taliban. They miss the real story. Every serious country in Europe is already doing what Britain pretends is impossible. Germany is deporting Afghans, male and female, right now. Denmark does the same. France quietly charters flights to Kabul every month. Even Sweden, once the poster child for open doors, has tightened its rules so much that asylum claims from Afghans are almost automatically refused. These countries all remain inside the European Convention on Human Rights. They simply interpret the rules the way they were meant to be read. A state has the right to protect its own citizens first. I keep hearing that leaving the Dublin regulation was a disaster. Nonsense. Dublin let France dump migrants on us if they had merely stepped 1 foot on EU soil. It forced Britain to take back people who had crossed half the continent. Rejoining it would not solve the Channel crisis, it would make it worse. The answer is not to crawl back to Brussels, it is to copy what works elsewhere and add some British backbone. Let me give you facts that never appear on the BBC. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees admits that 70% of the people crossing the Channel are single men under the age of 35. Less than 5% come directly from a war zone. Most have lived safely in France, Germany, or Italy for months, sometimes years. They are not refugees, they are economic migrants shopping for the best welfare deal. Britain's benefits are 30% higher than France's for a single adult, and the accommodation is infinitely better. That is the magnet. That is what needs cutting. I am told that we cannot send people back to Afghanistan because the Taliban are nasty. Yes, they are. They were nasty last year, they were nasty the year before, and they will still be nasty in 10 years. Yet Germany still removes rejected asylum seekers. How? They use chartered flights that land in Kabul at night, with Afghan government officials, yes, Taliban officials waiting on the tarmac to accept their own citizens back. The flights are full. The ECHR has not stopped them, because the court has always allowed removals when a country can prove the returnee is not personally at risk. The trick is political will, not legal impossibility. Some people gasp when I say we should send women and children back too. I say look at the numbers. In 2023, 29,437 people arrived in small boats. Only 1,200 were women. Fewer than 400 were unaccompanied girls. These are not mass movements of widows and orphans, they are overwhelmingly young men who have left wives and children behind. If we make it clear that nobody male, female, or child will be allowed to stay after an illegal crossing, the boats will stop. Full stop. Australia proved it in 2013. The boats stopped within 6 weeks of offshore processing and blanket returns. I keep hearing about the 290 million wasted on Rwanda. That figure is a red herring. The money was not wasted on Rwanda. It was wasted on lawyers, judicial reviews, and endless appeals funded by legal aid. Every flight was blocked by last-minute injunctions from activist judges sitting in London flats. The solution is not to abandon Rwanda, is to pass a simple act of Parliament stating that removal directions are final and cannot be stayed except by the Supreme Court sitting in open session. Parliament is sovereign. If MPs vote that Rwanda is safe, then it is safe, and no lower court should be allowed to say otherwise. The same trick works for the European Court of Human Rights. Parliament can legislate that interim measures from Strasbourg, the so-called Rule 39 orders, have no legal effect in the United Kingdom. We did it in 2022 with the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill. We can do it again. The argument that we must stay under ECHR rules or lose our moral standing is laughable. Israel is still in the ECHR and deports people every week. No one lectures them. Let me address the claim that we need these migrants because Britons will not pick fruit or drive lorries. Rubbish. Wages in those sectors have risen 20% since freedom of movement ended. That is exactly how the labor market should work: pay more, attract local workers. Instead, the Labour Party wants to open new visa routes for care workers and fruit pickers, driving wages back down and keeping 5 million Britons on out-of-work benefits. It is madness dressed up as compassion. I am told that closing the borders is heartless. I say the opposite is true. Every illegal boat that lands pushes legal refugees, the ones waiting in camps in Jordan and Turkey, further down the queue. The UN resettlement scheme has a waiting list of 1.4 million people. They include Yazidi women who survived ISIS slavery and Syrian Christians driven from their homes. They cannot afford people smugglers. They rely on official channels. By tolerating illegal crossings, we betray the most desperate and reward the richest migrants with the sharpest elbows. And spare me the talk of racism. I do not care if the migrants are green with purple stripes. The rule of law is colorblind. The moment we start treating people differently because of their race, we become the racists. Equal treatment means equal enforcement. If a white American overstays a tourist visa, he is removed. If an Afghan crosses the channel illegally, he should be removed too. Anything else is the soft bigotry of low expectations. Here is what I would do on day one of a government that puts Britain first. First, pass a Borders and Deterrence Act declaring that any person arriving illegally from a safe country, France, Belgium, Germany, is inadmissible and will be removed within 28 days. Second, sign removal agreements not just with Rwanda, but with 10 other countries: Albania, Turkey, Tunisia, Ghana, Ivory Coast. Each deal includes a fixed payment per removal and a British-funded reception center. Total cost less than the $7 million a day we now spend on hotels. Third, end legal aid for illegal arrivals except in cases of clear trafficking. Fourth, make the French honor their own law by paying them nothing until they stop every boat leaving their beaches. Fifth, reinstate the Royal Navy's turn-back policy in the Channel. Australian naval officers did it in the Indian Ocean. Our sailors can do it too. I am not naive. I know the lawyers will fight every step. Let them. While they are tied up in court, the boats will stop coming because the smuggler's business model depends on certainty. Pay 3,000 and you will reach Britain and stay. The moment that certainty disappears, the price collapses and the trade dries up. I want Britain to be a sanctuary for the genuinely persecuted, not a finishing school for economic migrants. The two goals are not incompatible. In fact, they depend on each other. The only way to keep public support for legal resettlement is to end illegal entry. Australians understand this. Germans are learning it. Swedes have been forced to learn the hard way. Britain can lead or Britain can follow. I say we lead.